Hello, everybody, and a hugely warm welcome to the CogX Festival 2023. Welcome. Well, thank you for joining us here at the O2 in Greenwich, but also if you're tuning in online, I'm Oli Barrett. I'm the host, the compere, if you like, for these sessions here on our Q&A stage, much more intimate than the main stage at the O2. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here in person. We've got a whole range of brilliant minds that we want you to meet over the next few days. Just to say, to mark this moment, this is the 7th edition of the CogX Festival, and we're hugely grateful for everyone who makes it happen. Right, onwards. Our first guest today is certainly a thought leader when it comes to AI, artificial intelligence. She's also an entrepreneur. She's an investor. She's a scientist by background, and we are absolutely delighted to notice that she is also the co-CEO of a brilliant company called Smart Eye as well. So juggling all of those things and more, hot-footing it from our main stage, please give a huge CogX Festival welcome to Rana El Kaliouby. Welcome, Rana. Thank you for being here. Please. Rana, welcome to CogX. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? It's always good to be back in the UK. I lived in Cambridge for many years. I love London.
We're happy to welcome you back. Thank you. Many of us caught your session on that main stage this morning, so thank you for that. If you had to put it sort of back into a nutshell, what was your main theme, just to get us thinking this morning?
My main theme is why AI needs emotional intelligence,
Yes.
why we need to inject EQ into our machines.
Right, so on that, we're going to delve into questions, but I suppose someone's already thinking, well, hang on, Rana, how do we even begin by defining intelligence, even for humans, let alone machines? What's your initial thought?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways to think about human intelligence, but I like to think of it in two buckets, your IQ and your EQ. And we've known over the last, 50, 60 years that your IQ matters, your cognitive intelligence, but actually your emotional and social intelligence matters even more. Your ability to kind of cue into others' emotional states and use that to make complex decisions. We do that all the time. I mean, we were talking backstage about your 9-year-old daughter.
Yes.
I bet you she does that all the time.
She does, and she was very thrown by this, because I said, we're talking about how machines will recognize facial expressions, and that led to one of the best chats we've had in the last
I love
few
it.
months.
That's awesome.
So I've got questions, but so is our gathering. I guess our big theme, Rana, is how do we get the next 10 years right? So we'll come back to that more than once in our session, but your opening thought on that huge question.
I think, a lot of the AIs we see today are smart, but they don't really get humans. They don't really understand us. And I think that's a problem, because AI is increasingly becoming ingrained in every aspect of our lives. It's, taking on more roles that were traditionally done by humans, and the trust isn't there. I mean, AI is gonna drive your car and hire your next coworker, and maybe it's helping your daughter with her homework, like all these things. How come we're not considering these very human elements of what makes us human, and we're not building these into our machines? Literally, a lot of AI scientists and researchers are not really considering this emotional and social aspects of AI.
Hugely important. So in terms of the scope, anything about your work, but also as an investor, you have a fund that you're already working on, but also, if you're happy to take questions, anything you don't want to talk about with our audience here.
Oh, all questions are welcome.
That's the only excuse we needed. Thank you. Well, everybody, thank you in advance. Feel free to say who you are as you're asking a question, but you don't have to. But be aware, because we've got an audience tuned in from around the world, you will be on record as you ask your questions, and so will the answers. So without further ado, raise your hand. Who wants to start the bidding with our opening question? I see you here, and thank you very much. We'll come right to the front here. Thank you. And Rana is always pithy, but we ask the same of our questioners as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zainab. How do you see large language models working with emotional intelligence? What are the ways that we can incorporate it within ChatGPT or the other models that are available?
How do you see large language models working with emotional intelligence? Great question.
That's a great question. And you did not introduce yourself.
Sorry. My name is Zainab, and I'm a solution engineer at DataIQ.
That's great. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Zainab. So imagine if ChatGPT had emotional intelligence. I literally kind of did that over a weekend with my son. He's 14, and we sat down and we created a prompt that allowed ChatGPT to incorporate your emotional state. And so, for example, if you said emotion blind ChatGPT, which is the ChatGPT we all use today, if you said, I don't know, give me a recipe for dinner, it'll just give you a recipe. But if ChatGPT had emotion AI and it sensed that you were stressed or maybe a little down, it would literally say, I am so sorry that you're feeling down. Let me think of some comfort food. Like,
yes.
Here's a few ideas that will lift you up. So imagine if we could marry an emotion sensing technology
Yes.
and feed that as input to ChatGPT.
So presumably, Rana, a little like music, it can tune into our mood or match our mood, but it can also shift our mood.
Yes.
So this begins a labyrinth of decisions.
Totally.
How does that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to think about that carefully, right? Because it becomes way more powerful if it's now able to sense and tune into your emotional state and then maybe put you in a different emotional state. How many people here have seen the movie Her? Okay, majority. Okay. So did you know it's about to turn 10 years? This movie was released 10 years ago. It
Yes.
blew my mind.
Remarkably unbleak. Just remind us of its essence.
So Her, basically Theodore is this kind of depressed adult man, and he downloads Samantha, his operating system. And Samantha has incredible emotional intelligence, and she really gets to know him really well. And my favorite scene is when he's in bed and depressed, doesn't want to get out. And she manages to rally him, and they go explore the beach and the world. And, she shifts his emotional state. Now, of course, it's Hollywood, so it takes a twist. And Samantha basically develops a mind of her own and becomes autonomous. And she's no longer aligned with Theodore's interests. So hopefully we don't get to that point with AI.
And if we do, or close to it, whereby Samantha, or rather our protagonist here, develops strong feelings for their AI, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the ethical implications of some of this technology. We need to be very careful. Because imagine if you have a personal AI assistant that knows you really well. It's infinitely patient than any other human being you know. It's there for you all the time.
Yes.
It's empathetic. I mean, I worry about what that does for not human-machine connections, but human-to-human connections.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that, again, we're not spending time thinking about these things.
I feel like Pandora's box is being creaked open as you speak. Zainab, have you got enough on this? Do you want to dig a little bit more? Very helpful, thank you. There was 2 other offers, and then we'll go searching elsewhere. I saw the gentleman right in the middle here, I believe, if that offer still stands. Feel free to riff off previous questions that have been asked or go somewhere else. Here it comes to the gentleman in the pink shirt. Thank you. No, please go, and then it will get passed back. Sorry, forgive me.
Hi, my name is Ved. I head innovation for large tech services from Tata Consultancy Services. Actually, my question was that, given what we've seen, it's likely that if and when AI can understand emotions, it'll actually be much better than human beings very quickly at understanding emotions. And there's this whole issue of trust. Now, we don't expect to be explained how a plane flies every time we get on board. So is it a matter of explainability? Is it trust? How do you see that playing out when the AI can do it, but we're always worried about what it can do?
Yeah, I think trust is really at the core of this, and it's kind of interesting how humans build trust. I mean, we make thousands of decisions every day, and a lot of these decisions are based on implicit trust, not explicit kind of talking about the terms and conditions. It's a lot of like just implicit trust, and the way we build trust is through empathy, through, again, emotional, like cluing into each other's emotional states. And so when machines are able to do that, I think they will become more persuasive and more powerful. At the moment, I like to say we're at the toddler stage. When I first started doing this research about 20 years ago, like literally the only thing we could train a computer to detect was 3 expressions: a smile, a brow raise, a brow furrow, because it's pretty, like they're pretty distinct expressions. Today, at SmartEye, our repertoire of emotional and cognitive states is about 50 different states. We can do things like, are you being sentimental? Are you attentive? Are you falling asleep?
Take us into the front seat of a driverless car, or indeed a driver car, where risks are sort of all around, because that's a piece of your work very interesting to us.
Yeah, that's one of the main kind of industries we're focused on in SmartEye. When you, as a driver, one of the main problems is attention and distraction. So Imagine like a camera that's on your dashboard, with your consent, of course, and that's not recording any data, but it's analyzing your state. It can detect if you're distracted. So if you're doing this, right, you're texting while driving. If you are starting to like fall asleep, we can detect that. We're working on intoxication. It's a little bit more complex. But the idea is that the car has your back. It can detect if you're kind of a distracted driver or unsafe driver, and it could hopefully intervene.
And we're going into detail, but is the trigger then that it takes over, that it wakes you up? What happens?
Yeah, it depends on the car brand, actually, and we partner very closely with them. Some car brands will just show you a coffee cup. Pretty subtle, just a reminder that you're tired. But imagine like a Tesla, which is semi-autonomous. It can actually literally say, Rana, you're so distracted right now, I'm going to take over.
Right,
and it just
really,
takes over.
really fascinating. Well, lots more on this, but if you pass the mic forward, sir, feel free to introduce yourself. All our guests, but you don't have to, sir.
Hi, yeah, my name's Ryan, and I'm a computer vision researcher. And the question I had for you was, when is it appropriate to measure someone's emotion? And you've been thinking about emotional computing for quite some time, and even you just mentioned now monitoring of people who are driving cars. But I can imagine that sounds great. I don't want the person driving my taxi to crash. But also, when I'm at work, I don't want my boss to have a constant graph of whether or not I'm distracted.
To realize you're falling asleep, Brian.
Exactly.
Right. When is it appropriate to measure these things?
Yeah. Like any technology, it's a double-edged sword. There's positive use cases, and there are ways to use this technology to discriminate against people and to spy on people, etc. When I started my company, Affectiva, out of MIT in 2009, my co-founder is a professor there too, Professor Rosalind Picard, who you might know if you've been following affective computing. She started the field. And we sat around her kitchen table and we said, okay, so many use cases. How are we going to draw the line? And we decided together that we're not going to engage in any industry where people do not have the opportunity to opt in. And so as a result, everything around security and surveillance is a no for us. And we got tested on this. So in 2011, we were literally, I know that there's a few startup founders here. We were literally 3 months away from running out of cash. And we were talking to a whole bunch of investors, but nobody was like giving us a term sheet or a check. And we got a call from a 3-lettered venture arm, like the venture arm of a 3-lettered intelligence agency in the US, not to be named. And they said, we'll give you $40 million on condition that you pivot the company to focus on surveillance, security, lie detection. And it was tough because we didn't have any money, but we decided that that was not in line with why we started this company. And I'm very vocal about this. I don't think the technology's there. I don't think regulation's there. So it's very dangerous to deploy the technology at scale without people's consent. So.
And kudos to you on that decision. When the technology is there and the regulation is there, how do you respond?
Yeah, we get approached, especially in the United States, there's a lot of public safety issues around gun violence, and we often get approached, like, can we detect if somebody's being suspicious or, there's suspicious behavior? So there's a safety angle, but honestly, I don't think it's enough to justify using the technology in this way. Like, the reason why we started this company and built this technology is I believe it has an opportunity to bridge a gap. Yeah. Bridge a gap between humans and machines, and hopefully bridge a gap between humans and humans in a digital world.
Right, it's a brilliant question. Thank you. Let's get some more questions. I want to sort of fill as many questions. I see you there. I'm looking for other hands as well. Who's got a question? It could be something that's already been said. Something else, particularly if you're new to CogX as well. Sir.
Hey, Peter Kearney. I work for an AI and deep tech venture studio. So we founded a company called Sociate that was initially doing curious, emotional chatbots for kind of online fashion retailers. You might see them around. Shout out Sociate. And they actually found through their studies that people don't want to interact with a chatbot fundamentally. And also different demographics had very different reactions to emotional intelligence in chatbots. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with the part that, chatbots are not the natural human way of communicating, right? We're multimodal. We communicate via facial expressions and gestures and voice. And machines are becoming more and more perceptual, right? Like Alexa and Siri, but still, we're missing that kind of liveliness that a lot of these interactions are transactional, which is actually why ChatGPT is kind of powerful, because you can have this like very intense conversation with it. But like there's this whole like virtual human economy. I don't know if you've heard of this, where I can literally, with a short video example of me, I could train a digital twin of mine, and the digital twin, in combination with LLMs, can essentially channel Rana. It can be the AI Rana, and I think that's really interesting. Again, like, will my team want to interact with AI Rana when I'm like jet-setting around the world speaking at conferences, right?
And Rana, how does your attitude to that change when it's your employer asking you to do the same? We've got writer strikes on this theme as we speak.
Yeah.
Is that disempowering?
I mean, I think all of these things are things we don't have the social contract when AI becomes so pervasive and it becomes so intelligent, both IQ and EQ. We haven't figured out what's the right answer.
So for our questioner, if you've got the mic, what's your latest thinking on this? Where have you got to?
Is that on? So yeah, we actually had to slightly pivot the business to focus more on in the background emotional intelligence, because people didn't like having those conversations, and we think this uncanny valley with avatars is it's a big computational problem in order to make avatars seem really realistic.
Human,
so I think there'll be a lot of interesting work in that space, in terms of how to control facial muscles, and I think it's an exciting space, but I'm not sure what the best approach is currently.
Yeah. One more thought on this. I think it also depends on the use case for the chatbot. So, do I want, how like you can ask for a chatbot when you're for customer service kind of thing on a website? Like, I don't know if I want that chatbot to be emotionally intelligent. Although, honestly, like, if it can sense that I'm super frustrated, maybe it gets me to a human faster, right?
But on this, just going back to that thought and looking for other questions as well. So when you've got a question, raise your hand, please, for the two of us. Robots having feelings, but humans obviously have feelings which can be developed for AIs. Okay, now, what does this mean for the epidemic of loneliness that we see around the world? Do you know, I want to go on a flip side of this, scalable mental health. So where's your thinking got to on that?
Yeah, I think there's an amazing application of having a personal AI assistant that can be your confidant, it can be your life coach, it can be, an assistant or a companion that you can tap into when you don't have a human friend or a human confidant or a family member that you have access to. So I think there's an opportunity to provide support that way. Like, we don't have enough mental health workers to assign to all of the patients out there. We just don't.
Isn't the double-edged sword, and perhaps we're overthinking this, that as the AI becomes more attractive, more powerful in how it can be supportive, it inevitably draws people away from the humans we were encouraging them to spend time with in the first place?
Yeah, and we have evidence of that, actually. So this study is about 5 years old now. It was done at USC. They had PTSD patients come in. Half were assigned to a human therapist, and half
post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, exactly. And half were assigned to a human therapist, and the other half were assigned to a digital avatar that had emotional intelligence. Yeah. And they found that the patients were more forthcoming with the avatar than they were with the humans. They shared more. The sessions were longer. They were more vulnerable. And I think that is very interesting. It's fascinating because and when they were asked why, they said, well, the humans are more judgmental. Like, this human therapist is going to judge me, but this avatar won't. And I just think that it's dangerous territory, but it also says something about who we are as humans, right?
So meanwhile, the AI is obsessing over how we're expressing ourselves. To what extent will we have a view on how the AI is expressing itself? or, quotes, feeling?
Yeah, well, at the moment, AIs and including robots do not necessarily have, like, we have not built emotion systems
Right.
in these devices. But in our home, for example, in our household, you got to say please and thank you to Alexa.
Yes.
You have to.
You can program it not to respond unless it got a
Yeah,
piece of
exactly.
it.
That's what I wanted to do. Like, if Adam, my son, is being rude to it, I think it should say, Adam, try again. Say please. It doesn't
Now,
do
let's
that. Yeah.
pause briefly. I see another question over here, and I'm looking out. We're entering our final 6 minutes. I see you there, and I welcome in new questioners as well. Please.
Very interesting topic. I'm Sam, CEO of Platin. We are actually building what is described here as a virtual version of individual in a social network.
Cool.
And my question is that, I'm not sure if this question was asked before, but what are your thoughts around Inflection AI? We know that the founders come in here and speaking later on. What are your thoughts about the notion of Inflection AI?
Yeah.
And just because we've got a very broad audience, particularly online, just remind us of where you think our question is coming from.
Yeah, so Inflection AI was co-founded by Reid Hoffman, who started LinkedIn, and Mustafa Suleyman, who's one of the co-founders of DeepMind. And they are on a mission to provide a personal AI assistant to everyone. And I think this is interesting. So back in the late 70s and 80s, both Steve Jobs and Bill Gates basically declared a mission that they're going to give every human a personal computer. It took a while, but 85% of humans today, out of the 8 billion people on the earth, 85% have access to a smartphone. So this is kind of the next evolution of this big vision. We want to give a personal AI assistant to everyone. And if you hear Mustafa talk about how they're doing that, empathy and emotional intelligence is core to this concept of Pi, the assistant. But I've tried it, and it's not quite there. We can have a conversation offline. I think there's a ways to go, and the reason is it's not plugged into any sensing engine. It's just using text. And again, well, text is only 7% of how we communicate. You want to see the expression.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mustafa and Reid, both guests at CogX
Yeah.
2023. So it sounds like you should be collaborating.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of
even more. The Coming Wave, Mustafa's last book, obviously. Take our final couple of questions. I'm looking around the studio here. Yes, why don't we just go right next to the pillar there in the white shirt? Thank you. Feel free to say who you are. You don't have to.
Hello, I'm Heywan, and I'm a science communications professional at the Sainsbury Wellcome Center, based in UCL. And I was just wondering if you have thoughts on the development of emotional intelligence in children. So I think there is a key stage in childhood. I think there are studies that point to ages 0 to 5, or something along those lines, where children learn about communicating with others non-verbally, and when we talk about EQ and emotional intelligence, we kind of say it as abstract things that we assume people have. But I was wondering how you see technology, especially with children with so much screen time these days.
Thank you. Now, it's a huge question. I'm going to ask you to be pithier than you'd like to be.
Okay, all right.
If you would, forgive us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most amazing use cases of this technology, and it's where I got my start back when I did my PhD at Cambridge, was helping kids on the autism spectrum read and understand nonverbal signals. So a lot of individuals on the spectrum find it really hard to make eye contact, but also express and understand emotions. So we partnered with a company that uses Google Glass, and they've incorporated our technology. And so basically, it helps the children make face contact. So it gamifies it. Every time they look a person in the eye, they get some points. And then it helps them. It's a training tool. So when somebody smiles, it can provide that just-in-time feedback. So that's been really powerful. So I think there are a lot of applications where we can help young people. But I also think we have to kind of curb screen time or ensure that our young people are getting...
Yeah, it's a path, isn't it, between those. That is a brilliant final question. So in the spirit of sort of quick fire, to what extent should an AI have to reveal that it is an AI, not masquerade as a human?
It has to, all the time, 100%.
And is that a moral code, or ought that to be law?
I think that, if we can regulate it, we should. If it becomes like a human rights thing, it should. I think that's really key.
Right. Your thoughts on AI being used in what I'll call electioneering? Got some big presidentials on the way.
Yeah, that's a big worry of mine.
Well, lucky for
We're
you,
gonna
it's in the
see.
quickfire round. So
Yeah.
if you were being very blunt.
It's hard to regulate, but it's a humongous problem, and it's happening. You're gonna see, like, I mean, we saw deepfakes. This is gonna be deepfakes at a whole new level.
100%. Mustafa Suleiman writing this week about how it should be banned. And a final thought, particularly we attract a global audience, but on leadership, on AI. What are you calling for? What would you like, whether it's leaders of companies or governments, to be more awake to?
Yeah, I think actually there's a lot of onus on us as AI innovators and thought leaders and business leaders. We're all either creating AI or we're using AI in our daily lives and in our businesses. And we have to raise the bar. We need regulation, but we should not wait for regulation.
Right, so take that initiative.
Yeah.
We have been, alas, beaten by the clock, but I hope that our audience here in our Greenwich studio will say a huge thank you to Rana El Kaliouby. Thank you very much
Oli.
indeed.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
everybody. Thank you.